The gift of today is the importance of sharing vulnerability and community. In that thing of that interconnectedness that we share, that we can lean into one another and lean on one another, that there are places where people are willing to show up in a disarmed way, and that by sharing our stories, we invite other people to share theirs, which softens the edges of what can be a very challenging and difficult experience. When you were talking about having little children in your care while you're also dealing with very elderly parents, my mom always is like, she goes, I feel like I'm a baby again. I eat my breakfast, I want to take a nap. I want to do this, I want to So you were really like that full circle.
What? For my husband, and that's just been recently, he had diminished so much that he was down on their level. And it was so good for him. And it was so good for the girls. My husband was a very selfless person. So I was willing to be selfless for him. But I became a caregiver for the first time for for both of my aging parents, but mainly my dad. After my dad passed away, my mom moved in with us, and my husband and I cared for her together. And then my husband became very ill unexpectedly. He had frontal temporal dementia.
Oh, wow.
And declined very rapidly. So kind of in a single moment, it seems like I lost his help and was caring for two people rather than just one. So right before my mom passed away, I was caring for both of them. And then he declined very rapidly and he passed away in May.
I had to become a caregiver because my husband was only 48. He had 2 strokes, 2 days apart. And the area that we were from didn't really provide good care for somebody his age. We couldn't get him into any of the local rehab places because they said he wouldn't mesh with the rest of the population there because it was all for older adults. So he actually lived in Omaha, Nebraska for the first part of his rehab for about 8 months. And I'm a pusher, so I brought him back and I pushed him. He was only supposed to have 75 words and he's got like 205 words, and they said he wasn't going to walk, and he can walk short distances if he's got his brace and his cane on. But I was never, when I was a kid, I didn't want to be a nurse or a teacher or anything caring or giving or loving. I'm not my style, but here I am.
Good for you for being a pusher, by the way, because you need it. When the person's like, doesn't want to do the PT and you know it's the right thing.
You know it's good for them.
Oh yeah, we go through that all the time.
Or you're the bad guy to be the good guy.
I just have no problem being the bad guy, I guess.
I guess I started because my mom became more dependent on my brother, me, and my wife. And then, several months ago, she said she wanted to leave her retirement community in San Diego, and so she asked my wife and me to find a retirement community for her. And then when we finally decided on a place, she changed her mind on a couple of floor plans, what she wanted, and then it struck me. We're going to be taking care of my mother more. She's still independent, still lucid, but she has a little more trouble getting around. But our 18-year-old son is looking forward to being her driver and bodyguard.
Oh, I love that.
So I noticed that I needed to step in and care for my mom when I was home right after deployment. And my mom was actually caring for my oldest daughter at the time. I think my daughter was around 2, 3. We were out somewhere and I noticed that my mom was kind of slowing down, and my mom was young. She wasn't even 50 yet at that time. And then she ended up passing out and didn't know from what. So we rushed her to the hospital, and she said, oh yeah, by the way, I'm sick. And so, yeah.
And I'm sorry, I'm feeling with you.
I'm sorry, yeah.
No, I mean, that's the thing. This is hard. So it's not just always one moment. It's a series of moments that comes up that invites us into caregiving. And for me, it was being the youngest of a very big family and always having parents who were older. They had me in their 40s, and always having this sense that time was going to be precious with them. And I was living in New York, and my mom fell and broke her pelvis. And so I came home and was caring for her with that. And then my dad had spinal surgery, and I just had always kind of stepped in that way anyways, even in minor illnesses. And then my father developed progressive supranuclear palsy, which is just an untenable illness, much like what you spoke of. And it took him very quickly. So I was his living caregiver with my parents, which was a really precious time, and then his hospice at the end. So ministering the morphine and the Ativan to him. And my mom, petite powerhouse, was very much, we were working with him in tandem. And she's just, over time, she's going to be 92 in a few weeks, has had multiple falls, heart issues, all of the things that come with living a really long, good life. But it means that I am the person, even though I have 8 other siblings, who steps in. But it really is something where you meet the moment as it's happening. I don't think you're ever really prepared to become a caregiver.
I was not prepared to become a caregiver. He was extremely healthy. He lifted weights 3 times a week. He rode a bike twice a week. He didn't eat carbs. He didn't eat dairy. He didn't eat sugar. So yeah, we had to do an about face and had to learn to get prepared.
I don't know if I was ready. It just happened, and my wife and son and I just rose to the occasion. To tell you how fresh it is, my mother, her plane touched down on Tuesday night. That's how new it is for me. Wow. So she only stayed with us Tuesday night. Then Wednesday morning, she wanted to go see her new home at the retirement community. Now, her furniture's not here yet. It's on a truck from San Diego. It may not be here for another week. So the retirement community is letting her stay in a guest unit for free. Mm-hmm. We'll be taking her on errands we have to establish care for, but we just did it because it was the right thing to do for her. My wife and I are showing our son we honor our mother, we honor his grandmother by taking care of her in this obviously late stage, this inevitable late stage of her life, and the obviously more difficult part of it.
For my husband, it was totally, I just wasn't prepared at all. He, like you said about your husband, he had been extremely healthy. And, the onset of this just took our entire family by surprise. And I remember the anxiety, and I felt like my heart was just beating outside of my chest. When we got his diagnosis, I knew something was going on. And I remember the doctor telling me that he would require more care than either one of my parents ever needed. With my parents, it was more of a gradual decline, and his was so sudden.
Surprises are rough.
Surprises are rough.
Compound surprises are
Yes.
super rough.
Yes.
Compounding surprises are rough too.
Yes.
I think the most important thing that I like to hold on to is laughter. My mom loves to laugh. So if I'll have the kids do something, I'm like, okay, when we get to grandma's, she's gonna wanna see your new dance that you learned. So make sure you show her because it's entertaining, and just anything to make her laugh and lift her spirits helps a lot, helps all of us. So that's what I feel my role is, to bring her happiness and continue her laughter for her.
My role is, I'm everything. I prep all his meals and help him with his baths, and trying to make sure that I balance the career that I've built for myself with his mental well-being and his physical well-being, and trying to create a safe environment for him and make it so that he can still do some things independently, so that he can hold on to that sense of self that he had before everything happened.
I mean, I'm with you that I kind of bring the humor to the heavy lifting. That piece of keeping my parents, whether it was with my dad and my mom together before dad passed, and then with my mom, of just, they're human beings first. They're still living, right? While someone's still living, how do we keep the love and the laughter and the, not to sound like a holiday thing, but how do we keep that? How do we keep that in the mix? I feel like it's just such a mix of things that you end up taking on. It is the cheerleader and the drill sergeant sometimes, the tears dryer. I'm the advocate. I am the bulldog when it's needed to be. I'm the person who acknowledges the immense care of doctors and nurses and CNAs who we rely on. And there is an aspect to what your role is to always keep your loved ones' needs at the forefront, even if it's going to make some people angry with you. Even if it's like, you know what? These are mom's wishes. These were dad's wishes.
I kind of experienced a little bit of that with my siblings. My sister's visits were very infrequent. My brothers were non-existent. But I felt they deserved to be informed, regardless of the comments they made, and they were rarely positive. It was always like, well, why didn't you do it this way? Or wouldn't it have been better to do it this way? And I don't like to be argumentative or confrontive with people. So I kind of just took it, and then would really beat myself up that I wasn't doing a good enough job. And, you know, even though healthcare professionals would praise the care that they were getting, you know, I felt like it was never good enough. But yeah, I considered it a privilege to be able to take care of them. And I have no regrets. We had very meaningful conversations together. I'm so grateful I had the opportunity, and I looked at it as an opportunity. You know, they were the three most instrumental people in my life, and I'm glad I was able to return what they had done for me.
And there is that saying that the people who are doing more than you aren't actually going to really criticize you.
Right.
To that way. It's so good for you for having that sense of how much you loved them. And I think that's the thing, is that at the core of all of it is love. And you gave
I got
it beautifully.
to hold, you know, even though it was really difficult, I got to hold each of their hands when they took their final breaths. And that's something that I will always be grateful for. It was difficult and hard, but
It's a gift, too.
it was a gift.
It's a great
Yeah.
gift.
A great gift
It's easy for other people to second guess you when they're not in this, when they're not in the know.
when they're not living it, yes.
The sacrifices that we make with my career, things like that, I've had other people who probably could have stepped in, but weren't going to. And so you say, all right, that big thing I've been preparing for 9 months to go away and to do this, to do these interviews and such. And the thing is, the decision for me was instant. It was, my mom was in the hospital. All of these things were showing signs of, you know, cardiac distress and stuff. And I was like, what's going to be the greater good for me in the long term? And the greater good for me in the long term was going to be not going and doing that other thing, because the regret, if something happened, because I am the person who's walking my chart, because I am the person who will stay overnight, and I'm also the person she feels the most secure with. She loves all of her children, but, you know, it's different relationships that everybody has with a parent.
I'm kind of the opposite of what you were. My regret would be if I didn't go ahead and follow the plan that I had for myself. Now, did I put it on hold for 2 years?
Sure.
I did. When we were first getting through rehab, when we were first bringing him home, when we were first going through surgeries resulting from the stroke coming home. But in the end, I had to reconcile the fact that I couldn't be present all the time. I still had to do something for myself, which has actually turned out to be a blessing and was the right thing to do, because now I'm in control of my own destiny. So when he does need me there, I can be there. But my biggest challenge is internal. It's reconciling who I want to be with who I need to be.
Yeah, I can relate to that wholeheartedly. There are some days when I was working, because I don't work now. I'm a full-time student, but on days that I would work and I knew I had to go cook, or if after working, or have to depend on my husband to go cook, or whatever the case was, I had to call my mom and say, hey, I won't make it today, but I'll give you a call later when I'm home and I'm settled. But that internal battle is very, very rough. So I definitely can relate.
We're often our own worst enemies, aren't we?
Yeah,
Oh,
we are.
absolutely. The stories we tell ourselves are the most destructive things. We start telling those stories.
Here's your hourly job evaluation.
And ultimately, the people who love us, who we are caring for, want us to be living vibrant lives as well. My mom is the first person to say, "You are so tired. Stay home. You took a tumble. Go put some ice on it." You know, they don't, especially if they were, you know, vibrant like your husband, independent, all of those things. They do want the best for us as well.
Do. They do.
I used to be a policeman, and I know burnout. That's why I'm not a policeman anymore. And, you know, if there was a caregiver school, someone could teach you all the mechanics of dealing with wills, probate, moving, doctor's visits, and similar in first responder training, police and fire and EMT, you can learn the mechanics of it. But even to this day, the bosses don't teach you very well about the emotional aspects of it. I certainly did not get that training. I'm not experiencing that as a caregiver yet because I'm still new.
It'll shift. I mean, the thing with caregiving, it's not static. You know, in some cases, it's an inevitable, inexorable decline that we're journeying with people on. In other cases, it may be that it's this shorter period of time, like when my mom broke her pelvis. That was something that could be mended, and that we knew that there would be a finite time. With my dad's illness, he was headed into an abyss of suffering. And, you know, that watching my dad lose his memory, lose his vitality, you know, when we're talking about burnout, it's inevitable. And I think we have to give ourselves grace. So the word I would offer somebody
Is grace.
is grace.
Yes, I agree.
Grace, gentleness, that sense of grace, that it was okay when my dad's brain would short circuit and he would say something cruel to me, and I would feel like a 5-year-old again. And I had to know that it was a malfunction in this big, beautiful brain that he had. And it's that ebb and flow. There just is no, there's, like, keep saying it, there's no one way to take the journey. None of us are saints, but that we're human and we're showing up for people in their humanity, and that vulnerability, illness, passing away, grief, it comes to us all. It comes to us all. And so for us to be gentle with ourselves has been a big lesson.
Nobody here is Superman.
But I
Nobody
tried to
is
be.
Superman.
Did you see my Wonder Woman cup upstairs? I earned that.
Well, I agree with you that for me it would also be grace. And I feel like even though I had what I called burnout days, in the big picture I didn't burn out.
Yeah.
Because I learned to communicate well with the doctors that helped me understand the person I was caring for, their constraints. And so I gave myself grace that way. I could ask questions. And then I also learned to give myself grace, and that it was okay sometimes to feel frustrated and angry over the loss that you were experiencing, because for me that's what it was, especially with my husband. I was losing him, and I wasn't ready to lose him.
My burnout manifests itself in anger a lot of times, and one of my biggest challenges and my advice to other people who are in this position is don't give in to the anger. And it's like you guys said, you have to give yourself grace. But my mind just works a little differently. So it's like, I get so angry, not at him, just angry. And
It's easy to lash out.
well,
Inward or outward, actually.
I don't have anybody that I lash out to. It's just internalized.
Yeah.
But that's how I feel about it. People's criticism, I mean, because no matter what you do, it's not going to be the right thing according to somebody.
Yeah.
And that's kind of why it's horrifying, because I'm sort of a sorry, I'm sort of a perfectionist, sort of, and so like I want to do everything right, and then when I don't, it's just really I'm disappointed in myself. I'm afraid that I'm disappointing him. Afraid I'm disappointing my kids.
Oh, it's so much to juggle.
It is. The burnout's real, but it also kind of fuels me. That probably seems counterintuitive, but it's like I get to burn out and then I get angry and then I'm motivated.
It's like defiance, right? Where
Yeah.
you're just kind of like, you're not going to beat me. Like,
Yeah.
this is
None of
this
us take me
thing.
down.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, we've beat so many odds anyway. We got married in 1988, so it was that length of time that we were together before that that allowed me to kind of just step into it. And even though I get angry and I am confrontational and I'm not as gracious as most other people, I think it's helped.
For me, I would say that early on, I would be mad all the time. I'm mad because I'm losing my mom. I'm mad about that. I'm crying. I am mad about that. I'm losing my mom. My kids are losing their grandmother. My kids are losing their grandmother. And my burnout comes from feeling that anger all the time early on. So my advice to other caregivers is take time to care for yourself, whether it's a spa day, isolation, a walk alone, because I'm always surrounded by people and family. And sometimes you need to just have that time to self.
I agree. With my dad's illness, because it changed overnight so quickly, we brought in home health that were actually from a community that my mom now lives in. So there are those shifts that happened with having home health, having people witness all your family moments is really challenging from a privacy standpoint. And I have very, very, very private parents, but you also got to know, like, which of the caregivers did the best with your loved one? Which of the ones were most present? Because some of them are still in that community that my mom lives in. It means when I've maybe needed an extra hand here or there with the surgery, we knew who was the best person to go to. So when mom and dad were still both together, living in this space and had home health, that was a tremendous luxury that we got to have with that. And then when mom moved into the community 8 years ago, it's so vibrant. She's way more outgoing than I am. Walking down to dinner, sitting at tables with people. I would feel like I was at the lunchroom in high school and want to go just like eat in my room. She really stepped into this vibrant life among people, you know, who had similar interests, really good lectures in the space. I go and I sing there often. I'm kind of the mascot of her community. They all know me. Everybody knew me very well because I was researching everything. But it was a community that fit for her. And that's really important. It's, you know, it's centrally located in a neighborhood that was close to where our home was always, so close to her parish, her faith life. And so having that continuity is super important.
My parents started out in a independent senior community, and we moved them in there when they could just no longer navigate the house by themselves. And part of the reason we moved them in there was for the sense of community and the activities. They could stay active. Well, my husband and I somehow got asked to become the family event coordinators. And we ended up volunteering over 1,500 hours. And what I found is that so many of the residents were, the ones that were happy were because their families were still involved with them.
My mother wanted to have her own space, so she made very clear her desire to look for a retirement community. We would have been happy to have her in our house, but it's a 2-story house, and every day she would have to negotiate those stairs, going up and down multiple times a day, and she does not care to have anybody following her up the stairs or to precede her going down the stairs. To her, that makes her feel incompetent, and that really annoys her. And I know better than to annoy her like that. So her being in the retirement community is some sense of relief for me. And if she decides she doesn't like it there, we do seem to have a lot of options here for another one.
Yes.
A few things I would just call out as far as like resources and senior living communities is my mom. I think I mentioned this earlier. She's on 100% oxygen. So the biggest thing for our family is how do we find resources for my mom in order so she doesn't go without her medication, so she doesn't go without oxygen, so she feels like she's a part of a really good community.
Every little bit helps on this journey. Any leg up, any hand holding that can happen is super helpful. And that having the grace, again, having the grace to invite that in and to accept it.
Yes.
And to feel the feelings.
Yeah.
To feel the feelings without shame.
Yeah.
There's just, I think what we keep discovering in our conversation is that there's no shame around any way that these things pass through us, or how we confront it.
Today has been, for me, an important step towards my healing. The grief has been overwhelming, but I think, kind of like I've shared earlier, my husband was so much about giving and helping and sharing that for me today was a way to kind of honor his legacy a little bit, and then to know that, which I kind of already did, but you know, there's other people out there that go through the same thing, that, you know, this isn't an isolated incident. So thank you for sharing your stories with me.
Thanks, Carolyn. Thanks, Carolyn.
I thank all of you too, because I am just starting this.
Newbie.
Yes, the rookie again. And so my mother is still in pretty good shape, and but now I'm going to be more prepared emotionally
Yes.
for the inevitable changes.
I think for me, it's the gift of today is the importance of sharing vulnerability and community. In that thing of that interconnectedness that we share, that we can lean into one another and lean on one another, that there are places where people are willing to show up in a disarmed way, and that by sharing our stories, we invite other people to share theirs, which softens the edges of what can be a very challenging and difficult experience just on the best of days. On the best of days and in the easiest of moments. So this lovely interconnectedness, I feel like we're going to move out of here knowing that other people understand us, and feeling understood is so important.
Yeah. I would say today made me feel a lot lighter than what I've been feeling. And it's given me a new outlook, another resource. So thank you guys for sharing, and it just makes me not feel like I'm alone, especially the self-preservation and the self-sacrifice. And yeah, I get that. So thank you guys for sharing.
This has been very therapeutic. I didn't come from a world where I knew other people that were caregivers. So I feel very honored that I got to sit here with you guys today. Really grateful that you used the word grace, both of you. Like, nobody's ever said that to me before. So, thanks.
You deserve it. You've earned it.